I exposed her fake women's wellness retreat at the Grand Meridian, built an ironclad case with digital proof, filed for divorce, and reclaimed life. It was supposed to be a women's wellness retreat. The same night, I discovered her location wasn't at Willow Creek Resort with her friends, but at the Grand Meridian Hotel downtown, in a reservation for two under her fitness instructor's name. You're probably wondering why I'm eerily calm telling you this. Truth is, when you've spent 8 years building a life with someone only to watch them methodically dismantle it with lies, something hardens inside you, not in a broken way but in a clarifying way, like steel forged in fire. I'm a project manager for Horizon Construction. I solve problems for a living. Structural issues, budget conflicts, timeline crises. I analyze patterns, identify weaknesses, and implement solutions. And that night, sitting alone in our living room with undeniable digital evidence glowing on my laptop screen, I approached my marriage the same way. It hadn't happened overnight. The first red flag appeared 3 months ago when she changed her phone password after years of transparency between us. New security protocol at work, she claimed with practiced casualness. Then came the mysterious texts that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen directed at me in months. The sudden interest in fitness with late-night sessions 4 times weekly. The new lingerie I never saw her wear. Each explanation seemed plausible in isolation. Together they formed a blueprint of betrayal that only a blind man would miss, and I've always had perfect vision. Last week she announced her plans with theatrical excitement. The girls are doing a wellness weekend at Willow Creek, 2 hours north. Total digital detox, hiking trails, and spa treatments. Her eyes sparkled with an enthusiasm that now made perfect sense. Not excitement for female bonding, but for the elaborate alibi she'd constructed. I nodded and wished her a good time. She didn't notice that I didn't ask any questions, didn't offer to help her pack, didn't suggest calling to check in. When you've decided to investigate rather than interrogate, you learn to weaponize silence. While she spent the next days preparing for her retreat, I prepared too. I logged into our shared cloud account she'd forgotten we maintained, activated the location tracking we'd set up years ago for emergencies, and reviewed our joint credit card statements, revealing dinner reservations and hotel deposits that no women's wellness weekend would require. The morning she left, she hugged me tight, almost desperately. For a second I thought I detected guilt in her eyes, some flicker of conscience about the elaborate deception she'd orchestrated. But then she smiled and said, "Don't miss me too much. It's just 2 days." I smiled back. I've got plenty to keep me busy. She had no idea how truthful that statement was. While she drove away in our second car, I sat down at my home office desk and opened my laptop. Time to put together a project plan for the most important confrontation of my life. By evening, when her best night ever text came through with a staged photo of her supposedly at the resort's lobby, I already knew she'd checked into room 718 at the Grand Meridian 90 minutes earlier. I knew exactly who was with her. And I knew precisely what surprise would be waiting for her on our bed when this best night ever concluded. What she didn't know was that I had stopped being a husband and become a prosecutor building an airtight case. And by Sunday evening, the verdict would be delivered in full, devastating clarity. While most men would spiral into emotional chaos after such a discovery, I channeled my anger into methodical precision. There's power in controlling your reaction when someone expects you to fall apart. That power becomes leverage when they don't know you possess it. I spent Friday night documenting everything. Our family cloud account had become a treasure trove of evidence she'd carelessly left behind. Text messages synchronized from her phone revealed months of conversations with her fitness instructor, explicit exchanges that made it abundantly clear their relationship had nothing to do with proper form or muscle tone. "Can't wait to feel your hands all over me tomorrow night. Tell your husband you're with the girls again. I've booked the suite this time. Last week was incredible. Still thinking about what you did in the elevator." Each message I read should have cut deeper, but instead they hardened my resolve. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a drunken mistake. This was calculated, continuous deception, dozens of nights repackaged as girls' nights or late work events over the past 4 months. I printed everything. The text exchanges, the location data showing her phone at his address on nights she claimed to be elsewhere, the credit card statements showing purchases at lingerie stores and dinner receipts for 2 at restaurants I'd never been to. The paper trail of betrayal grew until it formed a damning portfolio. At 11:30 p.m., my phone pinged with another notification. She posted a filtered photo on social media, a selfie with two female friends tagged at Willow Creek Resort. Wellness weekend in full swing. #blessed, #self-love. The timestamp showed it was posted just minutes ago, but her location data placed her firmly at the Grand Meridian Hotel. She'd planned this meticulously. The two friends in the photo were clearly accessories to her deception, willing to cover for her while she betrayed not just her marriage vows but 8 years of shared dreams, struggles, and plans for the future. I slept surprisingly well that night. When a situation becomes unequivocally clear, indecision vanishes. I knew exactly what had to happen next. Saturday morning, I drove to our bank and transferred half of our joint savings to my personal account. Money I'd primarily earned through years of 60-hour work weeks and countless business trips. Not enough to be vindictive. Just enough to protect what was rightfully mine. Next, I called the law office of Richardson and Associates. Despite it being the weekend, Martin Richardson, a former client whose office complex I'd managed the construction of, agreed to meet me. Within 2 hours, I'd retained one of the city's most respected divorce attorneys and had preliminary paperwork drafted. "You're handling this with remarkable composure," Martin observed as I provided details with the detachment of discussing a business transaction. "Most clients in your position can barely string together coherent sentences. Emotional reactions give away leverage," I replied, "and I've got no intention of giving her anything else." By early afternoon, I returned home to implement the final phase. I transformed our bedroom, the scene of countless intimate moments and whispered promises, into the stage for her reckoning. I arranged the evidence methodically on our bed: text message printouts, hotel receipts, location screenshots, all organized chronologically to tell the complete story of her betrayal. In the center, I placed 3 items: my wedding ring, a copy of the initial divorce paperwork, and a hotel key card from the Grand Meridian, not their room, but one directly adjacent that I'd booked under my name. Yes, she thought I was clueless at home while they carried on 2 walls away. The ultimate insult to my intelligence. I considered confronting them directly in their hotel room, but dismissed the idea. Creating a scene would only give her the narrative of an irrationally jealous husband. Public confrontations benefit the deceiver, providing opportunities to manipulate the situation through tears and accusations of overreaction. No, this confrontation would happen on my terms, in our home, with no audience to perform for. Just the cold, irrefutable evidence and the consequences of her choices laid out with the precision of an architect's blueprint. At 6:12 p.m., my phone showed her location beginning to move from the hotel. She was coming home, likely riding the high of her best night ever, completely unaware that I knew everything, completely unprepared for the surprise awaiting her return. I poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey, sat in a living room armchair facing the front door, and waited for the sound of her key in the lock. The game she thought she was winning was about to end, and I would be the one declaring checkmate. The sound of tires on our driveway broke the silence. I checked my watch, 7:38 p.m. She was home earlier than expected, perhaps eager to maintain the illusion of her fabricated retreat ending at a reasonable hour. Through the living room window, I watched her retrieve her overnight bag from the trunk, her movements relaxed and carefree, the confidence of someone who believes their deception remains perfectly intact. I took one last sip of whiskey, feeling its warmth spread through my chest. Not for courage, I needed none, but to savor the moment before everything changed, the calm before a storm of my own making. The front door opened, and she entered with the practiced casualness of a skilled performer. "Hey, you're sitting in the dark," she called out, flipping on the entryway light. Her voice carried that artificial brightness people use when concealing something. The retreat ended early. One of the instructors got sick. I remained silent, studying her. Designer jeans I'd never seen before. Hair styled differently than how she'd left yesterday. A faint hickey partially concealed by makeup at the base of her neck. Amateur mistakes from someone who thought she'd married an unobservant fool. "Everything okay?" She set down her bag, finally registering my stillness, the untouched television, the calculated position of my chair directly facing the door. A flicker of unease crossed her face. "How was the best night ever?" I asked quietly, emphasizing her exact text message wording. She recovered quickly, smiling with well-rehearsed enthusiasm. "Amazing. The resort was gorgeous. We did yoga at sunrise, had these incredible mineral treatments." "At Willow Creek Resort?" I interrupted, my voice level and controlled. "The women-only wellness retreat?" Yes, she replied. But I caught the slight hesitation, the fractional pause of a liar recalibrating. Why are you asking like that? I stood slowly, maintaining eye contact. There's something on our bed you should see. Her expression flickered between confusion and the first spark of genuine fear. What are you talking about? I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. I gestured toward our bedroom. After you. She moved tentatively down the hallway, glancing back at me once before pushing open the bedroom door. The sharp intake of breath told me she'd seen it. The meticulous arrangement of evidence laid out on our king-sized bed, her entire deception exposed in chronological order. What is this? Her voice had lost its artificial brightness, replaced by a tremor she couldn't control. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. The truth. Something apparently foreign to you. She stood frozen, eyes darting from the hotel receipts to the text message printouts, to the location screenshots showing her at the Grand Meridian instead of Willow Creek. The color drained from her face as she realized the extent of what I knew. I can explain, she began, employing the universal first defense of the caught deceiver. Save it, I cut her off. The evidence speaks for itself. For months of lies, multiple hotel stays, explicit messages with your fitness instructor that have nothing to do with physical fitness. At least not the kind you discuss with your husband. She turned to face me, eyes already welling with tears. Another predictable tactic. It's not what you think. It just happened. I never meant to. It just happened, I repeated. Multiple times over 4 months, with elaborate cover stories and fake social media posts. I pointed to the printout of her fabricated resort selfie. You got your friends to lie for you. You planned this meticulously. Don't insult my intelligence by claiming it just happened. The tears began to fall now, right on cue. Please, we need to talk about this. I made a terrible mistake. I still love you. Love. I laughed. Not from humor, but from the absurdity of her claim. You don't even respect me. If you did, you wouldn't have assumed I was too stupid to notice what was happening right in front of me. She stepped toward me, reaching out. I stepped back, maintaining distance. Don't, I warned. Physical contact isn't going to manipulate me into forgetting what you've done. Her tactics shifted then from tears to anger. The next predictable phase. So you've been spying on me? Tracking my location? Going through my private messages? That's a violation of my privacy. I nodded toward the evidence. And secret hotel rendezvous while I finance your lifestyle isn't a violation of our marriage vows? It was a mistake. People make mistakes. Her voice rose, desperate to shift blame, to cast herself as the victim. If you weren't so obsessed with work, maybe I wouldn't have looked elsewhere. There it was. The attempt to transfer guilt. I'd anticipated this exact response and felt nothing but cold confirmation of who she truly was. I've been focused on work to build our future, I replied evenly. A future you apparently had no intention of sharing honestly. Her eyes fell on the divorce paperwork centered on the bed. The realization that I'd already taken concrete steps seemed to hit her like a physical blow. You can't be serious, she whispered. You'd throw away 8 years over one mistake? For months, multiple encounters, elaborate lies, I corrected her, holding up the stack of hotel receipts. And yes, I'm deadly serious. Martin Richardson is representing me. Perhaps you've heard of him. He handled the Wilson divorce last year. The wife got nothing after infidelity was proven. The mention of the high-profile divorce case visibly shook her. This wasn't just emotional dramatics. This was real, with legal and financial consequences she hadn't anticipated. Where am I supposed to go? Reality was setting in, the gravity of her situation becoming clear. I gestured to her overnight bag by the front door. You managed to pack quite efficiently for your weekend. I suggest you continue that momentum. Her face contorted with a mixture of disbelief and panic. You're kicking me out tonight? You can't do that. Actually, I can. The house is in my name. You insisted on it when we purchased, remember? To simplify the paperwork since my credit was better. Another decision that now worked against her. You have 30 minutes to pack essentials. Anything else can be arranged through our attorneys. The controlled way I'd handled everything, the evidence, the legal consultation, the calm delivery of consequences, left her without the emotional scene she needed to manipulate the situation. No audience to perform for, no high ground to claim. As the reality of her new circumstances settled in, I watched the woman I thought I knew dissolve into a stranger, one who had severely underestimated the man she married. One who is about to learn that some nights come with a price far higher than a hotel bill. The transformation that followed was both predictable and pathetic. Within minutes, her indignation collapsed into desperate negotiation. "We can work through this," she pleaded, following me back to the living room. "People rebuild after affairs all the time. We could try counseling. I'll cut all contact with him. I'll do whatever it takes." I poured another whiskey, unmoved. "The time for whatever it takes was before you decided to betray everything we built, not after being caught. You can't just throw away 8 years. Her voice cracked, the reality of her situation finally penetrating. "We have history, memories, plans. One mistake shouldn't erase all of that." For months, multiple encounters, elaborate lies, I repeated the same phrase I'd used earlier. "That's not a mistake. That's a campaign." She grabbed her phone, fingers trembling. "I'm calling my sister. I need somewhere to stay tonight so we can discuss this tomorrow when we're both calmer." I nodded toward the evidence on the bed. "By all means, explain to your family why you're suddenly homeless. I'm sure they'll be fascinated by the details." The color drained from her face again. This was another miscalculation on her part, assuming her family would automatically take her side without knowing the facts. The same sister she'd mentioned had experienced betrayal in her own marriage years ago. She would not be sympathetic to an adulterer. "You wouldn't tell them," she whispered. But the uncertainty in her voice revealed she knew exactly what kind of man I was. Honest, direct, uncompromising. "I have no reason to lie," I replied simply. "Unlike you." 23 minutes later, she had packed 2 suitcases with essentials. Her movements were erratic, punctuated by renewed attempts at emotional manipulation, breaking down while holding a photo from our wedding, accidentally dropping and shattering a gift I'd given her, pausing at the doorway with tearful glances back. None of it touched me. The woman I had loved didn't exist anymore, perhaps never had. This stranger with her familiar face held no power over me. As she loaded her bags into her car, her phone rang. The screen lit up with his name, her lover, undoubtedly wondering why she'd left the hotel earlier than planned. She declined the call with a panicked glance in my direction. "I'd take that if I were you," I said from the doorway. "Explain your new living situation. Maybe he has room for you in his apartment, though I doubt his wife would approve." Her head snapped up. "His wife?" I smiled without warmth. "Did you think my investigation stopped at hotel receipts? Martin's private investigator was quite thorough. Apparently you're not the only married woman he's been training. His wife receives the full dossier tomorrow morning, by the way, professional courtesy from one betrayed spouse to another." The shock on her face confirmed she'd had no idea. Another layer of deception, not just against me, but against her. The man she'd risked everything for had been playing her just as thoroughly as they'd both played me. "You're bluffing," she whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. I shrugged. "Believe what you want. You've demonstrated remarkable talent for self-delusion." Her phone rang again. This time she silenced it completely before getting into her car. Through the windshield I could see her composure finally shatter completely, shoulders heaving with sobs, hands gripping the steering wheel as if it might somehow anchor her to the life she'd just lost. I closed the front door before she drove away. Her breakdown was no longer my concern. Inside, I methodically gathered the evidence from our bed, filing it neatly into a labeled folder. The organization brought a sense of closure. The case was built, presented, and concluded. No loose ends. Within an hour, my phone began to light up with notifications. She'd called her sister, after all, who had predictably demanded the full story. Then her parents, then mutual friends. The narrative she attempted to spin, that I had overreacted to an innocent misunderstanding, crumbled when faced with the detailed evidence I calmly provided to anyone who asked. By midnight, my mother-in-law called, her voice tight with controlled fury. "She's here sobbing uncontrollably," she informed me. "Says you've destroyed her life over nothing. Did she show you the text messages, the hotel receipts, the location data proving she was never at any wellness retreat?" A heavy silence followed. "No," she finally admitted. "But regardless of what happened, family doesn't just abandon family. You took vows." Vows she violated repeatedly and systematically, I cut in, my tone remaining even. "I understand your position as her mother. You should understand mine as a man who refuses to be disrespected in his own marriage. We've always thought of you as a son," she tried, shifting tactics. "Surely we can find a path forward." "The path is clearly marked in the divorce paperwork," I replied. I suggest she find a lawyer before Monday's filing, unless she prefers a public hearing where all evidence would be entered into the record. Another pause. You've changed, she finally said, as if this were an accusation. No, I corrected her. I've simply stopped accepting less than I deserve. After ending the call, I spent the rest of the night reclaiming my space. I stripped the bed completely, replacing sheets, pillowcases, and duvet cover with brand new ones I'd purchased earlier that day. I moved her toiletries from the bathroom into a box for later collection. I deleted our shared playlists, updated all passwords, and removed her access to financial accounts. By dawn, I'd systematically erased every daily reminder of her presence. The physical purge matched the emotional one already completed. The house felt lighter somehow, cleaner. My phone continued buzzing with messages from her friends, her family members, even her lover's wife, who had indeed received the investigator's report and reached out in solidarity. I responded to none of them. My statement had been made, the evidence had been presented, the verdict delivered. There was nothing left to say to any of them. The chapter had ended. I was already writing the next one, alone, unburdened, and with the unshakable certainty that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you will not tolerate. The next 40 to 8 hours brought the expected counter-offensive. When manipulation fails, the desperate turn to escalation. Sunday afternoon, she arrived unannounced with her father and brother-in-law in tow. The cavalry summoned to reason with the unreasonable husband. 3 people standing on my doorstep, a psychological power play meant to intimidate. I invited them in with the calm confidence of someone who had nothing to hide and nothing to fear. This has gone far enough, her father began once seated in my living room, his authoritative tone honed by 40 years as a high school principal. Everyone makes mistakes. This scorched earth approach helps no one. Her brother-in-law, an aspiring corporate lawyer, nodded in agreement. The legal path you're taking is unnecessarily aggressive. No judge will look favorably on. Did she show you the evidence? I interrupted, directing my question to both men. They exchanged uncomfortable glances. She admitted to indiscretions, her father said carefully, but she's devastated, genuinely remorseful. Remorseful about getting caught, I corrected, not about the deliberate choices she made repeatedly over 4 months. I retrieved the folder containing the evidence and placed it on the coffee table between us. Before we continue this conversation, I suggest you review what actually happened, not her sanitized version. Her brother-in-law reached for the folder first, professional curiosity overriding family loyalty. Her father's expression hardened, clearly uncomfortable with the directness of my approach. For 10 minutes, silence filled the room as they reviewed the text messages, hotel receipts, location data, and photographs. With each turned page, their expressions shifted from skepticism to shock to something approaching embarrassment. Jesus Christ, her brother-in-law finally muttered, setting down a particularly explicit exchange. Her father's face had gone ashen. The principal, who had dealt with countless student disciplinary issues, now looked lost, confronted with evidence of his daughter's calculated deception. I had no idea, he said quietly. The authority had drained from his voice. They always do, I replied without bitterness. No one wants to be the villain in their own story. Still, her brother-in-law attempted, though with notably less conviction. Divorce seems extreme. People rebuild after affairs. They can, I agreed, when both parties want to. I don't. Her father looked up from the evidence, studying me with new understanding. You really won't consider reconciliation, even with counseling? Trust, once broken completely, can't be restored, I said simply. And I refuse to spend my life with someone I can't trust, someone who would lie to my face for months while betraying everything we built. She says she loves you, her father tried, a last-ditch effort. People who love you don't systematically deceive you, I countered. They don't manufacture elaborate lies to conceal their betrayal. They don't manipulate you when caught. Her actions have revealed her character far more honestly than her words ever could. They left 20 minutes later, subdued and without the outcome they'd sought. No shouting, no drama, just the quiet devastation that comes with truth. Her brother-in-law shook my hand at the door, a silent acknowledgement of respect. Her father simply nodded, the gesture carrying the weight of painful understanding. Monday morning, Martin Richardson called to inform me that her lawyer had reached out. She was not contesting the divorce terms. That's unusual, Martin noted, especially given the financial implications. Did something happen over the weekend? Reality happened, I replied. She lost her support system when they saw the evidence. Smart move, he acknowledged. Most clients keep the details private out of embarrassment, which allows the cheating spouse to control the narrative. The following days brought further attempts at contact. Flowers delivered to my office with apology cards I didn't read. Late-night texts alternating between self-pity and rage. A tearful visit to my workplace that my colleagues politely but firmly redirected to the parking lot. None of it penetrated the clarity I'd achieved. The woman desperately trying to reclaim her comfortable life wasn't fighting for love or connection. She was fighting for the lifestyle and security she'd jeopardized. Her desperation increased proportionally to her lover's withdrawal, which had been immediate and complete once his own marriage was threatened. 2 weeks after that fateful night, I received an unexpected visitor. His wife, the other betrayed spouse, had asked to meet. We sat at a coffee shop downtown, two strangers united by parallel deceptions. "I wanted to thank you," she said after introducing herself, "for having the courage to expose what was happening. I suspected for months but convinced myself I was paranoid." She was composed, dignified despite the circumstances, a corporate accountant with the same methodical approach to crisis that I'd employed. "The worst part isn't even the betrayal," she continued. "It's realizing how thoroughly they believe they could fool us, how little they respected our intelligence." I nodded in understanding. "They mistook patience for weakness, trust for blindness." "Exactly." She stirred her coffee absently. "My friends keep asking if I'm going to try to save my marriage. They can't understand why I'm not fighting harder to keep it." People who haven't experienced this kind of betrayal don't understand that some things, once broken, aren't worth repairing, I replied. "Yes." Relief showed in her eyes at being understood, especially when the breaking was so deliberate. We talked for nearly 2 hours, comparing notes on our parallel journeys through deception and discovery. There was no romantic connection, despite what others might assume about such a meeting, just the clean recognition of kindred spirits navigating similar storms with dignity and tact. As we parted, she offered a handshake and a simple observation. They chose each other over us, but in doing so, they freed us to choose ourselves. I carried those words back to my reclaimed home, finding unexpected resonance in them. This ordeal had forced me to clarify exactly who I was and what I deserved. Every attempt at manipulation had only strengthened my resolve. Every tear-filled plea had confirmed the correctness of my decision. That night, I received a final text from my soon-to-be ex-wife. "I never meant to hurt you. I hope someday you can forgive me." For the first time, I replied, "This isn't about forgiveness. It's about consequences. May your future relationships receive the same loyalty you showed this one." I blocked her number immediately after, closing the door on that chapter with finality. The surprise I'd left on our bed that night had revealed not just her betrayal, but my own strength, a strength I would carry forward into a life rebuilt on my terms, with integrity as its foundation. 6 months passed with the efficiency of well-executed project management. The divorce was finalized in record time. Assets were divided clearly along lines of contribution. Mutual friends sorted themselves naturally between those who valued loyalty and those who excused betrayal. The house sold at a profit, allowing me to purchase a downtown loft with floor-to-ceiling windows and no memories embedded in the walls. While most men in my position might have spiraled through stages of grief, I experienced something different, a steady progression toward clarity, each decision executed without emotional cloudiness, each step forward deliberate and focused. The information network that forms around any divorce brought occasional updates I neither sought nor could avoid. She'd moved in with her sister temporarily. The fitness instructor had reconciled with his wife, leaving her as the sole casualty of their mutual deception. She'd taken a job in another city, reinventing herself with the same efficiency she'd once employed to destroy our marriage. None of it affected me. The woman who had shattered our vows now existed only as a cautionary tale, a lesson in recognizing red flags I would never ignore again. "You've handled this better than anyone I've represented in 30 years of practice," Martin commented during our final meeting, closing the leather portfolio containing the last of the paperwork. Most clients struggle with anger, vindictiveness, or depression for years. "What purpose would that serve?" I asked. "Emotional tailspins benefit no one, least of all yourself." He studied me with professional curiosity. "Many would argue that suppressing emotions is unhealthy." "I haven't suppressed anything," I clarified. "I've processed everything efficiently. Anger served its purpose as fuel for action. Once action was complete, anger became unnecessary. Sadness acknowledged the death of something valued. then transformed into appreciation for the lessons learned. Martin nodded slowly. That's remarkably evolved. Most people don't compartmentalize so effectively. Most people don't approach betrayal as a problem to be solved rather than a tragedy to be endured. This philosophy guided my rebuilding. I renovated not just my living space but my entire life architecture, accepted a promotion that had intimidated me previously, requiring relocation oversight for our firm's expansion projects across 3 states, reclaimed hobbies abandoned during marriage, mountain biking, jazz piano, weekend hiking trips to remote peaks. The men in my social circle reacted with a mixture of admiration and discomfort to my transformation. Those trapped in dysfunctional relationships viewed me with barely concealed envy. Those in healthy partnerships sought to understand the blueprint I'd followed. "Weren't you devastated?" asked one friend during a poker night, 3 bourbons lowering his filter. 8 years, just over? The 8 years weren't erased, I replied, arranging my chips with precision. They simply ended when they needed to end. Everything has a natural lifespan. "But you loved her," he pressed, genuinely confused by my equanimity. "I loved who I thought she was," I corrected. "That person never existed." The reality became clear, and I adjusted accordingly. "I couldn't do it," another friend admitted. "Walk away so cleanly." "You could," I countered, "if you valued yourself properly." That was the revelation that continued to clarify in the months following my divorce. Self-respect as the non-negotiable foundation for every relationship, the willingness to walk away from anything that compromised it, the clarity to recognize that loneliness is preferable to disrespect and temporary discomfort superior to permanent compromise. Exactly 1 year after discovering her betrayal, I received an email from her personal account. The subject line read simply, "Anniversary." I nearly deleted it unread, but professional curiosity won out. "I know you've moved on and I respect that you probably won't respond. Today marks 1 year since everything fell apart and I've spent every day since regretting the choices I made. Therapy has helped me understand the insecurity and selfishness that drove my behavior. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I couldn't recognize its value until it was gone. You deserve better than what I gave you. You deserve the loyalty and honesty I failed to provide. While I hold no hope for reconciliation, I wanted you to know that the consequences of my actions have changed me fundamentally. I will carry the lessons from destroying our marriage into every relationship I build going forward. I hope you've found peace. I hope success continues to follow you. Most of all, I hope you eventually find someone worthy of the strength and dignity you showed, even in our darkest moment." I read it twice, searching for the emotional manipulation that had characterized her previous communications. Finding none, I closed the email without responding. Not from anger or resentment, but because there was simply nothing to say. Her growth was her journey now, separate from mine. That evening, I stood on the balcony of my loft, watching the city lights emerge as dusk settled. My phone buzzed with a text from a woman I'd been seeing casually for the past 2 months, an architect I'd met during a project consultation. Intelligent, independent, direct in her communication. No games, no pretense. "Dinner tonight?" "That new place on 7th you mentioned." I smiled, typing back a simple affirmative. Whether this relationship developed into something significant remained to be seen. I was in no rush, no longer driven by social timelines or expectations about where I should be at this stage of life. The surprise I'd left on our bed that night a year ago had been intended as a final statement to her. What I hadn't anticipated was that it would also be a beginning for me, the start of a life defined by unwavering standards, by the courage to enforce boundaries, by the willingness to stand alone rather than compromise fundamental principles. Some might view my story as one of loss, a marriage ended, trust shattered, years invested in something ultimately discarded. I see it differently. What was lost was an illusion. What was gained was unshakable clarity about what I deserve and what I will never again tolerate. That night changed everything, but not in the way she feared when she saw the evidence laid out so methodically on our bed. It didn't destroy me, as she might have worried in her more compassionate moments. It refined me, strengthened me, revealed the steel beneath the accommodation. The best night ever, she had called it in that careless text. She couldn't have known how prophetic those words would prove to be, not for the affair that ended her marriage, but for the awakening that began my freedom. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.